Hello everybody, Buddy Webb, Midland, Texas. The Midland police, who we now know were under my home on the night of the murder attempt, falsely claimed that I had accidentally shot myself with my 12-gauge shotgun after tampering with evidence and lying on the police reports. I didn't see the shooter or their gun, so I didn't know what type of gun that I was shot with, and they used this against me. I did know that burglar alarms were going off in my home before I was shot, and I had proof on a voice recorder that I told the police about. The police found it and then stole it. Based on evidence found, I now believe that I was shot with a .45 handgun that was loaded with Glazer safety slugs. These are pellet-filled, plastic-tipped bullets that can be fired from handguns. This was on purpose so they could make it look like I was shot with my shotgun. This way they could rule my murder an accident and collect the extra $500,000 in life insurance. It also would stop an investigation for capital murder. Make no mistake, this was a premeditated for-profit murder or attempted murder, and nobody would suspect that somebody under your home had shot me, or that a large group of police would be helping them. The person who shot me was in no danger whatsoever because I didn't know they were there. They could have left out of the same tunnel that they came to my home from without trying to kill me. This was by choice. It's now known that I had trapped a burglar in my guest bathroom before the murder attempt when I tie-wired my door shut, but I didn't know that criminal was there at the time. They had the choice to call the police and get arrested, but they knew if they did that, it would then expose the underground homes, the tunnels, crimes, and other murders. They chose to murder me instead of giving up and going to prison. Here is some of the evidence that I found which helped me figure out what I was shot with. Okay, the first bullet point says, I had reported repeated burglaries to my home starting a year before I was shot, and I was later told that the last owner, Mike Lawhon, was telling his friends about people breaking this home before he died. Local business owner Aaron Packelhofer told me that 4 people had been murdered, died in my home. I have a print screen on that. The next bullet point says the utility room where I was shot was very small, and there just wasn't enough physical room for me to be shot with a 4-foot-long shotgun at the location that I was shot. This told me it had to be a short gun, like a handgun, like a .45 handgun. Lisa Rogers, documented on Facebook, told me that I was shot with a .45. That was a very specific size, and it fits the space requirements. I don't know how she knew this, but my guess is that one of her sons was under my home when I was shot. The next bullet, the surgeon stated on the operation report that he removed a large amount of plastic and lead pellet debris from the wound. Plastic would not be there if I had shot myself with my 12-gauge shotgun. Some people have mentioned that the wadding is plastic in a shotgun shell, but I remind them that the ER doctor, who happened to be my brother-in-law that I didn't know about, stated on the ER report that he removed the wadding before surgery, so it wasn't there in surgery. A Glazer safety slug is a plastic-tipped, pellet-filled bullet. Plastic tip, let that sink in. That's where the plastic comes from. Certain x-rays show a powdery look like seen in other x-rays found online where a person was shot with a Glazer safety slug. Okay. A 12 gauge is a very powerful gun, and multiple people told me that I would not have a foot today if I'd been shot from point blank range with this gun. Glazer safety slugs can be bought for a .45 handgun, the size that I was told I was shot with. The entrance and exit wounds were 2 inches above ground level. Okay, so the shot didn't come up. The shot was straight across the ground, 2 inches above ground level. That told me where the shooter's gun was located when they pulled the trigger, and that the would-be killer who pulled the trigger was standing below my home. Multiple people are now documented as saying that tunnels and underground homes are here. One of them was running for Midland Sheriff when I secretly recorded him. And there's also supporting evidence found on old Google Maps. Looks like one of them underground homes is in my backyard. Okay. The size of pellets removed from my foot were 2.5 sizes different than the size of pellets that were loaded in my shotgun. However, they are the same size as those in a Glazer safety slug. That's based on lab reports and the shotgun shell itself. That's ballistic evidence proving I wasn't shot with my gun. The ex-wife had already told me there was a trap door here, but she didn't say where it was located. I believe this was covered up with concrete during the 10 days that I was in the hospital. Sergeant Matt Davis had the keys to my home during this time. That's who I would be asking. He's the sergeant that quit the police department. Multiple proofs show that I was not shot with my gun, such as no empty shotgun shell was checked into evidence by CSI Marty Barrett, who picked up my gun from my house. And Barrett checked in 4 live shells from my gun, but not an empty one. If I had been shot with my gun, as was falsely claimed, then he would have to unload the spent shell before he could even unload the live shells to get them checked into evidence. That was more proof I wasn't shot with my gun. Arthur Welch, the former boyfriend of the ex-wife, posted on Facebook that he overheard her planning my murder with her police friends to steal life insurance. I have a print screen of that where she posted on Facebook. She had taken my life insurance books from my home when we separated, and my sister-in-law, Mitzi Webb, told me that she saw them while they were gone. We could ask Mitzi. This book showed that if her friend, that a friend of the ex-wife, Detective Rosie Rodriguez, would rule my murder an accident, then it would add $500,000 to the payout. The big prize is the underground home in my backyard, the $1 million underground home. I had filed divorce papers on the ex-wife 5 days before the shooting, and she was going to get nothing otherwise. Detective Rosie Rodriguez testified in court that she found a tripwire on my gun. But there's no tripwire in evidence, and none of the other 10 police at my home mentioned a tripwire, including CSI Marty Barrett, that stated on police reports he picked up my gun from my house. It came out in court that Rodriguez was lifelong friends with the ex-wife that had filed divorce on 5 days earlier. They had gone to elementary and junior high together. The police report for the night of the murder attempt was subpoenaed in 2013, but illegally withheld in violation of the court order. I didn't know it existed until 7 years later, and this report timestamped 5 police officers at or inside my home that were not seen arriving on the security camera, which had seen other officers minutes earlier. That would have been Martin County Sheriff John Woodward and the late Midland County Deputy Mike Naylor. They were seen at 11:01, and Dickie was in my house at 11:03, and he wasn't seen arriving. So how did he get in my house? That's the question. All of my other doors and windows were secured with extra locks. That was because of the crimes I was reporting. And this was noted on the police reports. It's documented. This is what proved that police officers Davis, Dickey, Chatwell, Angel, and Hale were under my home on the night somebody under my home had shot me. That doesn't say they shot me, but we know they were under my home that night, and obviously they know who did. The ex-wife told me in so many words that a lot of people were here when I was shot. So I believe that some kind of party was going on in the underground home in the backyard that night. I also believe this is where the oil show parties were held and where a young girl was murdered at in 2010. My friend Angie McGee Hurley told me about that murder. I found what I believe to be evidence of a tunnel that had been cut coming from the back of Home Depot, which is directly by my house, to my house. And I showed this suspected human trafficking murder tunnel to Homeland Security in 2019. 2 weeks later, the ground was dug up and concrete was poured there. And Homeland is supposed to stop human trafficking, not pour concrete to help cover it up. Based on old Google Earth maps, it looks like my next door neighbor had a tunnel entrance in his backyard, which was put in around the time the last owner, Mike Lawhon, died, and then he took it out around 2015 due to me posting these maps on Facebook. You can find them on old Google Earth pictures. Just go look up my address, 3802 Fair Circle. That's my home. This isn't even all the evidence, but it's enough to show beyond shadow of a doubt that I was not shot with my gun, which means I was shot with another gun. And I believe that other gun was a .45 handgun loaded with Glazer safety slugs to make it look like I shot myself with my shotgun when that's not what happened. How can law enforcement ignore this huge amount of evidence and these violent crimes? I was told 4 people have been murdered here. This requires investigation. Buddy Webb.